The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.
Welcome to the Tim Heale Podcast. In this episode, I'm going to have a chat with John. John's going to tell us all about his life. John, if you can tell me where and when you were born, and if you could describe what it was like where you grew up, the schools you went to, and the education you received. So, John, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I'm glad to be with you. I grew up in the United States in a small town called Beaver Dam, Wisconsin. It's in the north central part of the country. It was a fairly small town, about 14,000 people. I was born and raised there until I graduated from high school. That's the only place I lived, and it was a good place to be. It was close to the state capital, so you were within an hour of a little bit of culture if you needed it. It was the kind of town, the kind of school where you knew everybody in your class. Not small enough to be close friends with everybody, but there was probably 180 students that I graduated with. And when I was going to school, I was a little bit involved with sports. I ran in track. Played a little bit of basketball, not well ever, but primarily I was involved with the arts. So I played trumpet, I was in band, I was in choir, I was in theater, and I was also part of student government. I was the president of the student senate as well as the band president for a couple of years. So pretty unassuming life, but as I was growing up, we traveled a lot through the United States, road trips and camping and hiking in our national parks every summer. And, when things got difficult in school, as they sometimes do as we're growing up, I held on pretty tightly to those memories of hiking through the wilderness. And that's what sustained me through the awkward years of teenage life.
Okay. Well, I think you jumped ahead just a little bit there.
Did I give you too much information already?
No. You've gone from sort of being born, and you're sort of halfway through high school and leaving.
Oh, well, help me fill in the gap. What else do you want to hear?
Let's have a look at what it was. What was it like in your elementary school?
In the
Can you
elementary,
remember that far back?
Oh, sure. I went to Washington Elementary School, which was a block and a half from my house. And so I would walk every day.
Walk?
Yeah, you've surely
Does that
heard
happen
of
in
it.
America? I thought everybody drove everywhere.
I know.
Your mum didn't drive you around the corner?
I should have had a large gas guzzling SUV, but I had to walk uphill both ways through rain, sleet, and snow.
How can it be uphill both ways? It's either uphill and a downhill, or it's downhill and an uphill.
I might be exaggerating. So, but here's an
How small were you? So I suppose you being small, it seemed like a steep hill.
Probably, even when it was flat, it felt like a steep hill. Come to think of it, it was profoundly flat, that block and a half from my house to the school. But I went there, and so the school was grades 1 through 6, plus in the States, we call it kindergarten, the year before first grade. And when I started in kindergarten, my mom, who had stayed at home with me when I was born, she started working in kindergarten as a teacher's assistant. And so there was and of course, just starting school, that was a little bit comforting, but as the year went on, as a young person, I was a little bit horrified that she might follow me all the way through my schooling. As it turns out,
I was just thinking that. Did she follow you into elementary?
That was the concern, but as it turned out, she never left kindergarten. She stayed in kindergarten for many, many years as I progressed through my other years. so she was in the same school until I moved on to middle school. But I think, I don't know, I think for a lot of people, those elementary years are filled with confusion and uncertainty and uh, just trying to figure out how to be a friend, just trying to figure out how all the systems work. And I think I went through much of that in a little bit of a fog, just trying to sort it all out. And I was a good student. I got I got good grades. I was in the accelerated programs, and I for the most part enjoyed it.
Mhm.
Um, had friends and did all of the normal things. Um, but I think it was all a little bit baffling to me. I was a little uncertain of who I was, certainly.
Mm. So did I guess because your mum was in the school, you didn't kind of get bullied too much, or did you?
No,
Because yeah,
I don't think.
scared of being bullied because your mum was there to sort of protect you, was it?
I don't remember my mom coming to the rescue. I don't think I was ever cornered and in need of being saved. It was a little bit um, idyllic in that school. I don't remember a lot of kids being bullied. I don't.
Mm.
I certainly wasn't bullied. I mean, there were kids you didn't want to make them angry just in case, but I don't remember. You Okay, so I do remember one particular incident there. I'm not gonna use his name, just in case he hears it, but there was this one really tall kid, and he was a little awkward, and people were a little bit afraid of him, and my solution to and so I was a little bit also afraid of him, but my solution, one day as we were standing in the lunch line, we were beside one another, and I looked at him and I said, "Hey, do you wanna just be friends?" And he said, "Yeah, sure, let's be friends." Um, and we didn't ever act on that friendship. We didn't ever hang out. We didn't ever do anything together. But maybe in some small sense, my young brain thought that would be some sort of protection from that kid
Mm.
who was just a little bit scary. Or maybe in my young brain, it was an actual effort to bridge some divides and see that this kid was on the outside a little bit. Maybe all he needs is to be brought into the inside. Oh, look at this. You're pulling all of this stuff out of me, Tim. So, because this, besides working in the kindergarten class, my mom was also the lunch lady. She would be in the lunchroom and make sure that things didn't get too out of control, too loud, um, and she also worked out on the playground when the kids were out for recess. Uh, and she had a big heart for what she called the naughty ones. She was convinced that the ones who acted out and got in a little bit of trouble, that really all they probably needed was a little bit more love. Maybe a little hug in the lunch
Mm.
line, maybe a little encouragement out on the playground. And so that was her methodology throughout life. And
Mm.
so maybe that small little effort for me to reach out to that difficult child
Yeah. So that
was,
kind of rubbed off from your mum then.
yeah, maybe that was a little reflection of her in a
Mm.
good way.
Okay. So now we can move on from elementary school. Where was your I guess junior school, is it? The next one up?
Yeah, we called it junior high. And so that was grades 7, 8, and 9 in our town.
Mhm.
It varies a little bit depending on the town,
Yeah.
of course, but we were 7, 8, and 9. Um, that was just, 3/4 of a mile, maybe a kilometer down the road from our house. Uh, I didn't often walk there. I did ride my bike there frequently, um, but sometimes we would get a ride, those
Mm.
3/4 of a mile. Um, and so, those 3 years were pretty unremarkable. I grew into my very awkward early teenage years there, and I got squarely involved with music, played trumpet, and that's where I found my community
Mm.
in music. I was a little athletic, as I said, but I wasn't particularly good at any of the athletics, and so felt a little out of place there. American baseball, my parents tried to make me play that every summer. I might be the only person in the history of T-ball where they just put the ball on top of a little rubber tube and you swing at it. I could be the only person in history to have struck out in T-ball, which gives you some
Uh,
idea of my level of skill. Um,
so you weren't a jock then?
I was certainly not a jock. No. But I found my home in the arts, in
Mm.
theater, in music, in singing and playing the trumpet. And I think it might be the thing that saved me. I think everybody needs a place where they can feel like they belong, and that was
Yeah.
the place that I was made to feel like I belonged.
So when did you start playing the trumpet? Was it when you got to junior high, or had you had an interest in it in elementary?
Again, our last year of elementary school was 6th grade, and I believe that that was the year they let you start to play an instrument. I remember I remember in 5th grade, the high school band came to our gymnasium, and they played a concert, for all of the students to listen to, and I this is a strange memory, but I remember seeing the musicians tapping their foot on the ground to keep the beat. And for some reason in my little 5th grade mind, I thought, "That's super cool that they get to tap their foot like that. I wanna tap my foot like that." And that's and so then, the next week we got to go to the junior high and we got to try out the instruments and see what we might play. And I wanted to play trombone, but
Mm.
I was a small kid, probably part of the reason I wasn't super athletic. My arms weren't long enough to play the trombone, to get out to that end
Mm.
position. So they looked at me and they said, "You don't wanna play trombone. Here, try this." And they gave me a trumpet, and it worked. I made some sort of noise come out of it, and they said, "That's good enough. We can work with that." And
Very
so
good.
so in 6th grade, if I remember right, a couple mornings a week, the band director would come over from, junior high and lead a horrible sounding band practice, and then when you got up to junior high, it became a regular class. So I think it
Yeah.
was that, 6th grade when I started playing.
So did you learn music as well at that time?
Yeah, I learned how to read music, learned, notation and timing and rhythm and all those things, and I think I was innately musical. I loved to sing. I
Hmm.
had a good ear. I loved to listen to music. But that was when my formal training started, and I learned how to actually read notation.
Yeah. Did they make your parents suffer by giving you a trumpet to take home and practice at home,
You
or was it
know,
just at school?
they gave me a trumpet to bring home. Um, I don't think my parents ever suffered. I think that not because I was that good from the early days, but because they
They
were
went out.
that they went out. Yeah. They My dad was deaf and my mom was never home. So no. Um, that's not true. But I think they were really patient people, and they were
Mm.
they were willing to suffer through the horrible sounds early on, for
Yeah.
the greater good. And as I progressed, I won't go into high school yet, but as I progressed, I got pretty good, and
Mm.
they took great pride in that.
Oh, good. So junior high then was fairly uneventful, but it gave you a grounding in in the arts.
Yeah.
So, along with that, obviously playing your trumpet. Did you take drama classes and stuff like that? Were you part of a? Would you have a play that you put on each year, or was it just sort of with the band that you were playing? Um, and
I,
what sort of band was it? What sort of music were you playing?
so our band instructor w- was very literate in um, the musical repertoire. So we played some John Philip Sousa marches, but we also played more contemporary things. But we played a lot of classical things. I remember us playing um Paul Hindemith's Symphonic Metamorphosis in a band
Mm,
score. And so some pretty challenging things for junior high
yeah.
students. Uh but she was also a marching band choreographer. And so, we had the regular symphonic band that would play more classical things. During the football season, American football, we would
Yeah.
play in a marching band in the halftime show. We would also play pep band for the basketball games. We would also play in the pit orchestras for the musical theater that we did. And
Mm,
so I played a bunch of different styles. I also was tapped by the local American Legion to come out and play the Memorial Taps song for veterans who funerals who had
oh,
passed.
for the last post.
Yeah, for their last post. So I,
Yeah.
I regularly did that as well. But in addition to playing trumpet, I also sang in the choir, both the classical madrigal choir and the um, more pop jazz choir, and I also performed in the theater sometimes. Again, not a huge school, so
Mm,
if you were involved in one thing, you were often involved in 8 things.
yeah. So how did you manage your time with if you were on a theatre group and you got sort of band practice as well, or the band was taking or was in the orchestra pit, what, or did you have to deconflict a lot?
Well, I mean, I guess the school did a good job of managing that and making it possible. So the jazz band would practice in the morning. The regular
Mm,
band would be a plain school class session, and then the drama would meet after school. So
mm,
they navigated that pretty well. Um, Also fair to say, as I got into middle school, it was not eventful, but also my friend groups started changing a little bit.
mm,
And, the jocks went this way and the party kids went that way. And and I was left in this small little world where I was friendly with a lot of people, but I started feeling like maybe I didn't quite fit in anywhere, except like I
mm.
say with that musical crowd. But um my social life at that age probably was those musical activities. My social life was band practice. My social life was the theater.
Mm.
And beyond that, there wasn't a lot. And so it made it easy to manage the time in that way.
Okay. Did you put on any plays or musicals at that time? And did you play in them? Did you sing in them? Did you dance in them? Or were you just in the orchestra playing your trumpet?
I'm trying to differentiate in my memory the difference between high school and junior high now. Um, I think when I was in junior high, my theater involvement was the community theater. And so I was involved in different ways backstage, in the chorus, in working on props for things like Pippin and West Side Story. And my very first theatrical debut, if you will, was playing Huck Finn in in Tom Sawyer.
Aha. So
It
you
was
were Huck then.
I think that I am a huck. I mean, I live in a van, for crying out loud.
So you actually got a lead role.
I guess I got a lead role. Yeah. Yeah.
Wicked. So let's move on. Let's chase it into what do you call it, high school.
High school. Yeah. Yeah. So in high school, I was in the thick of being awkward and uncertain and having a lot of questions in my life about who I was, while at the same time excelling in a lot of musical things. I think I said earlier I was the high school band president for 2 years. I was the principal trumpet player in the band, and I played in the band and the orchestra and the jazz band and the pep band and the marching band, um, pit orchestra. Um, my other activities started falling off. I did a little bit less with theater. I was in Brigadoon. I was in I can't remember. There were a couple others, but primarily by then I had shifted from the stage down into the
Yeah.
pit, and it was all trumpet all the time. And you know, and I loved it. I loved trumpet. Thinking back now, there was no chance that I was going to make my career as a commercial recording artist as a trumpet, or playing with a symphony, or being in the backup band for somebody, because my tone was great, my technique was great, but I didn't have that stratospheric range that a person like Maynard Ferguson does, that a commercial photographer
Yeah.
needs to be way up past high C.
Yeah.
That wasn't in my skill set. Um, and so, in part because everybody expected it, but in part because I also loved music. Very early on in my high school career, I sort of just understood that I was going to go on to study music, as life went on. Uh, and I loved it, and I thrived, and I would win the awards, and I would get the solos, and I liked when people would stand up and clap for me, and that was a little bit of edification. But
You like the adulation.
yeah, adulation was good, but more than anything, and this is hindsight. I didn't know it as a 15-year-old, but what I loved was the experience of the creative process communally, to create something together, because we'll get into this, but I work as a photographer and writer now, and I love those solitary creative pursuits. But there is something about making something with a group of other people, of coming together and bringing those
Yeah.
skills together in a unified sense, that's really appealing, and I was drawn to that.
Brilliant. So you excelled going through high school. Then
Mhm.
you became sort of class president. I mean,
Yeah,
it's quite amusing that on the thinking back to films that have seen Back to the Future.
right.
Yeah, let's get him for class president.
Yeah, so it's weird, because I definitely found my niche, but, um, I wasn't a wallflower. I wasn't hiding in the shadows, but at the same time, I just didn't feel like I fit in anywhere. I think like a lot of teenagers, and so, there it feels like a little bit of a a contradiction in that terms, because I was excelling and I was doing well and I got all of the applause at the right times, but I still felt like I didn't know where I belonged.
So moving on then from high school, did you go to college or
I
what did
did.
you
I
do
went
after high school?
I went to a 4-year public university. Wisconsin, the state I grew up in, has a network of state colleges. There's the main one, 50,000 students in Madison, at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, but then they have a bunch of satellite schools throughout the state. And I went to one in the northwestern part of the state called University of Wisconsin Eau Claire, Clearwater in French, I suppose. But I went there as a music education major for my first year. It was a 4-year liberal arts college. It took me 5 years to get through it, but I wasn't in a hurry. And it's not like today where you graduate with $70,000 in college debt. It was affordable at the time.
Yeah.
And my parents were not wealthy people, but they were frugal. And so between the jobs that I worked during school and in the summer, and between a few scholarships I got and the way my parents were able to help, I was able to graduate without any student debt. And that meant a lot. That was a freeing experience.
That's a result in itself.
Yeah.
So what did the course entail? I mean, sort of 4 years into 5.
Mm-hmm.
So the first year you did a bit of music majoring. So what was the rest of the course?
Yeah, typical liberal arts studies, some English and composition, some basic physical science, some social science, humanities, some math, and some foreign language. I think at a certain point in the States, I had to decide between a Bachelor of Arts degree and a Bachelor of Science degree. Science degree was a little obviously skewed more towards the sciences and math, and I wasn't a big fan of math, and so I went the foreign language route, which got me the Bachelor of Arts. So it was core classes like that, and part of the reason why it took me 5 years is because for a couple years in there, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. Once I knew I wasn't going to be a music major, I sort of drifted a little bit, and I thought, well, maybe I'll be a national park ranger, or maybe I'll be a dentist, or maybe I'll be a counselor. I don't know. And I eventually wound up in journalism for my degree. But I think I wasted a little time going down. No, I didn't
Which is
waste it.
why you ended up doing that extra year, I guess.
Yeah, and the other reason why I did the extra year, I could have graduated in 4.5 years, but during that last year, my wife and I were saving money to go travel through Europe. We wanted to do the usual graduate from college and go backpacking through Europe thing.
Yeah.
And so I took what would have been half a year's work and I spread it out over a full year so that I could work more hours at a job and save a little bit more money and stay for a little bit longer in Europe.
So what language did you do?
Nur Ambition, Deutsch. I speak a little bit of German.
Oh, ich bin Ausländer, nicht wie Stein.
Uh,
Say it like that, neither will anybody else.
What did you say?
Can't name that film.
No, I can't. What was it?
It was the you've got me now. The Wooden Horse.
You can't name the film either,
No,
can
no.
you?
Was it The Wooden Horse or was it the other one?
Yeah,
it's The Wooden Horse.
Okay.
Ich bin Ausländer, nicht wie Stein. You say it like that, neither will anybody else.
Got it. Yeah, my German is not as good as you would imagine it would be after 3 or 4 years of studying it, but I also didn't use it very much in the last 30 years, so it's faded a bit.
Don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah, I was rather proud of myself traveling through Europe and parts of Austria and even little parts of Hungary that I could understand people. I could make my way through and communicate. Not complex ideas. We couldn't carry on philosophical debates, but we could do some basic communication, and
that's the main thing. You can order beer and food and somewhere to stay and a way to the station and how to get to somewhere.
Yeah, right. So we navigated it okay.
So you said that you and your wife. When did you get married? Were you married in college or you
No,
going out together?
we met in college. We dated for 2 or 3 years, and we got married after college. So we actually had not gotten engaged before we went to Europe, but we did have the church reserved for the wedding before we went to Europe. The which is a little bit backwards, but the truth was that we could afford to buy our plane tickets, or we could afford to buy an engagement ring, but we couldn't afford to do both. And
Mm.
we decided we really wanted to travel together. And honestly, once we realized that we could travel through Europe on a very slim budget for 3 months and not kill each other, we thought we could probably navigate marriage okay. So we've been married for 31 years now.
I was just going to say, did it last?
It has lasted so far, and now we live in a van together, and we still haven't killed each other. So I think we're doing
Oh,
pretty good.
yeah. So I guess you're rubbing along okay then,
She's a patient soul, I think is what it comes down to.
especially if you're playing your trumpet in the van.
Mm, no, we haven't touched the trumpet in years. That part is history.
Okay, so you had a tour around Europe. Where did you fly into? Where was the first place you got to?
Mm, we were supposed to fly into Frankfurt, but the weather was bad and we got rerouted to Stuttgart. I had an uncle who had served in the military, and he lived near Kaiserslautern, um, which I think is sort of central Germany. And we stayed with him for a little bit,
Hmm.
and then we ventured out. We made a westward loop and went through France and then circled back through Austria. Then we headed east into Hungary, what was at the time Czechoslovakia, because it was still one country. This was the fall of 1990. So the
Hmm.
wall had just come
So the
down.
wall had come down a year before then.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
So
and
what time of year was it?
it was
You
the
said you got
fall.
bad weather in the fall.
It was the fall.
Yeah.
Yep. And so I think we got there early September and did September, October into late November.
Hmm.
So we went through Hungary, Czechoslovakia, back through Germany to pick up some supplies at my uncle's, and then we dropped south into Italy and over to Greece, and flew out of Athens on our way home.
All right. So that's quite a bit of a route. So to get from Italy to Greece, then did you take the ferry across from somewhere like Ancona?
We took the ferry from Brindisi down at the
Brindisi.
uh,
Mm.
heel of the boot, and
Yep.
took that over to Athens. Um, on our trip, we got robbed. We didn't really get robbed. We had our things stolen from us. We were camping. We were backpacking,
Mm.
and when we were in Budapest, um, we put all of our things in the tent and we went into town to grab some supplies. It was a campground where you had to show your pass to get in, and we set
Yeah.
up right by the office thinking that would be secure.
The
And we,
safest place. And
yeah, we did what every backpacker does, and you throw your junk in the tent and you go to town. And when we came back, all of our stuff was gone. And,
mm.
the tent was still there, but we had to decide then if we were going to end the trip or if we were going to carry on. And we decided that, um, you know, that was a bad day, but we didn't have to let it ruin the rest of our trip. So we went shopping and got some new socks and some new shirts and, carried on. Um, and it was good. We,
Mm.
we met some other people who had also been robbed that day. Um, then we met some other people who had not been robbed that day, and they offered to buy us all beers and console our souls a little bit. And so we all sat around and drank beers and decided we could carry on.
Wicked. So that was it then.
That
So you
was it.
carried on, and
Yeah.
then so you flew back from Athens. So, what was the highlight of the trip?
The highlight of the trip.
Because I guess we just done the low light of the trip, which was
That was
getting
probably
lost.
the low light of the trip.
Mm.
Let's see. I mean, so much of it was just adventure. I mean, we had so little money. You know, we got to look from the street. We got to look down into the Roman Forum, but we didn't have enough money to go into the Roman Forum. You know, when we were in Paris, we got to see the Eiffel Tower, but we couldn't go up the Eiffel Tower. We got to look at the, you know, the nice glass pyramid at the Louvre, but we couldn't go in the Louvre. I think the highlight of it was discovering the freedom of being able to make choices every day about where you'll go, and the ability to meet people and make new friends in unexpected circumstances. So I don't think, I mean, all of the places were lovely, but I don't think the highlight was a place. I think the highlight was the
The
people
experience.
and the
Yeah.
experience. Yeah.
So, did you get the old European rail card to travel around on?
Yeah, the old Eurail pass. Yep.
Yeah.
You know, and so I think we were there for 3 months, and we bought a 2-month rail pass because the first little bit of the trip, we were staying with my uncle, and at the
Mhm.
last, we knew that we'd be stationary in Greece, and so it was that middle 2 months that we
Yeah.
used the rail pass, and for example, when we went to Paris, we had $30 a day between the two of us for sightseeing and lodging and food and everything we wanted to do. That was not enough. But
Mm.
when we were in Paris, um, with our rail pass, we could sleep on the trains. You didn't get a sleeper
Yeah.
car, but you could recline the seats and sleep. So at 10 o'clock at night, when we were done sightseeing, we would get on a train going out of town, and we would sleep on it for 5 hours and set our alarm, and then we'd get off, and then we'd take the next train back into Paris for 5 more hours, and we'd get there in the morning, and so we stayed there. We were in Paris for 5 days, but we never slept there,
Mm.
you know, because it cost too much money.
Yeah.
So we found some creative ways, but we found that rail system really useful. I
Mm.
wish we had that sort of public transit in the States. Um, when we were in Eastern Europe, when we were in Hungary and Czechoslovakia, we took a night train from Budapest up to Prague. I didn't really understand what the exchange rate was. It's not like now where almost everybody's on the euro, you know, every day with a different currency. So we wanted to take this night train. They really wanted American currency. They were super excited to get their
Mm.
hands on US dollars. So, passage for two in a sleeper berth. Uh, I gave the guy a $20 bill. I didn't know what I would get back, and he wouldn't give me any money back. But he had 7 large beers and 5 big bags of potato chips. And so that's what he gave me as change. So I don't know exactly what the math is on that, but I felt like I came out pretty good on that with
Mm.
tickets, a bunch of beer, and some potato chips for
Yeah.
20 bucks.
I think you was mugged off actually, but there you go.
Yeah, probably. I do know that when I arrived in Czechoslovakia, I accidentally paid $17 to use the bathroom, uh, because again, I didn't know what the exchange rate
Mm.
was, and it turns out it should have been about 9 cents.
Yeah.
So they really, they saw me coming there, but
Yeah.
I really had to go to the bathroom. The alternatives were not good.
No. So, so you've done your bit of travelling around Europe. You've flown back out of Athens, back to the States. What happened next? Where did you go? Did you get married?
You know, in in time, within a year, we were married. For a little while, we lived with my wife's parents at their house. We got jobs as bartenders, just paying the bills, trying to get
Yeah.
established. And then I got a job at a newspaper in Wisconsin as a staff photographer. So that was my first real job out of college.
Mhm. So had you done, as part of your degree, did you do photography?
Yeah. So my degree was technically in writing, for newspaper reporting.
Mm.
But by the time I graduated, between the journalism department and the art department, I had more photography classes than I had writing classes. And it was fully my intent, as I graduated, that I would make my living as a photographer. So I got my first job. I worked for a couple of years at a daily paper. Then we moved up to Minneapolis, and I started working in the commercial field. So I was shooting a lot of product photography for catalogs and shooting a lot of advertising work. And then um, this was probably bad timing, but uh, a few months before our first child was born, and a few months after we purchased our first house, I quit that job with a salary, and I went out on my own. I opened my own business. It was, on the one hand, it was foolishness, but on the other hand, it was just the right time to do it.
Yeah.
I had been building a little client base in the evenings and on the weekends, while I worked this other job. Uh, and I got so busy that I had to make a choice of either turning down some of that work or freeing up more time for that work. And this was the
Mm.
path I wanted to go, so it just made sense. My
Yeah.
parents were horrified. They thought it was completely irresponsible. Uh, but we haven't starved to death yet, so we're doing
Yeah.
okay. Yet.
So, question there then is, you started on the newspaper in Wisconsin.
Mhm.
Did they supply the camera equipment, or did you have to have your own cameras?
Uh,
And was it wet film or was it digital?
it was wet film. I'm that old. I'm 55 now, and so we were
Just a boy.
so it was film, and it was darkroom, and
Mm.
developing prints, and the Associated Press, the press service, was
Yeah.
just starting to send out digital prints, but we still had the old transmitter, and so they would send a print, and it would print out on this little device and spit out
Yeah.
into a tray, and that's where I started, and I loved the craft of darkroom work, the
Mm.
mystery of it, and the alchemy of it. I really loved that, and I miss that craft part of it still. Um, but yeah, it was a daily paper. There were two staff photographers, and you're shooting the sporting events and the graduations and election day and all of the accidents and the fires and all of the
Yeah.
normal news things in a small town. I didn't It was good training grounds, but I didn't like that pace. I didn't
Mm.
feel like I got to exercise my craft in those situations. I felt like everything was too rushed. You might have 12 assignments in a day, and then you still had to come home and process the film and make the prints before you could leave. Um, and
So that
and
was all your own equipment then?
oh yeah, sorry, it was my own equipment. Every year I was only there for a couple of years, but uh, the management asked me frequently to put together my wish list and a budget. I want this equipment and that equipment and the other equipment. And after spending hours doing that, their answer was always the same. We don't have any money to buy any of that stuff. So it was an exercise in futility. I don't know why they even asked me to do it, because they probably knew they weren't ever
They're
going to
never
buy
going to
it.
do it anyway.
No, it got me hopeful for a little while, and then it just crushed me.
Yeah. So what was your first camera?
Uh, my my first camera was a Canon AE1, and I bought that for myself with the money I earned from shoveling snow from people's driveways and mowing their lawn in the summer. I think I was 12 years old when I bought that.
Right.
And it was a lot of money. I remember I made a chart that I hung on my, it looked like a little thermometer that I hung on my bedroom door. And then every time I would put, more money in, I would color the red line up a little bit further. And finally I got to go buy it. And the day I bought it, it was on sale. So I actually had money left over when I came home.
All right.
So
Result.
that was a treat.
And it just had the one lens for it? Was it a single? Was it an SLR camera?
At the time, I just had one lens, and then it was an SLR camera. And over time, I purchased other lenses. When I got into college and I got serious about it, I wanted to change over to Nikon equipment because my understanding was at the time, all of the newsrooms that did have big fancy lenses and the long lenses for sport, that was all Nikon equipment. So if you had Nikon cameras, you could use those lenses. So when I got into college, my brother was 8 years older than I was. He was established and had a job already, and he bought me my first Nikon. Nikon, FE2? Was that a Nikon? I don't know. It was an old mechanical Nikon, but my brother bought me that as a college gift, and it was a great gesture, really kind.
Did it serve you well?
Pardon me?
Did it serve you well?
It did serve me well, and I stayed with Nikon for most of my career. Toward the end, I switched back to Canon when they were doing some video technology, and Canon was more advanced than Nikon. So I shuffled back to Canon. Now they're both really good, but I'm never going to switch again. Actually, I photograph a lot with just my cell phone now. They're so good, and they don't weigh nearly as much. It's a lot easier to carry them around.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you've got into the hack industry.
I got into the what?
Hack. So you're a news hack.
Oh, I guess so. I haven't heard that word before, but I like it.
Oh, that's what we call news hounds over here. Hacks.
Okay. All right. See, I'm getting smarter all the time.
Every day is a school day.
Thanks for teaching.
You're welcome. So let's have a look. So you've sat up on your own with a 3-month-old.
Yeah. I
How
went
did
out.
It go? Did it blossom immediately? Did you get enough work coming in to keep the roof over the head?
Yeah, pretty quick. I was fortunate. The trajectory was I started working for local magazines, and newspapers, and very quickly ramped up to shooting for national magazines, National Geographic Traveler, tourism publications, human interest stories, and my specialty was people and travel. And so I shot for travel magazines. I shot for tourism offices. I shot for some PR campaigns, and really did well. It grew quickly,
Did it
and
involve a lot of travel then?
it did. We always made that work well with our family. I was never gone for more than a couple weeks at a time, but I would go for 2 weeks, and then I would be home for 4, and then I'd go for another week and be home for 5 weeks. And so I was home more often than I was gone. And when I was home, I had the flexibility to be engaged with our family, and I could walk the kids to school, and I could volunteer in their classes, and I could be there for all of their things. I was able to control my travel enough so that I was mostly home for the big events.
Yeah.
But if I was gone for a birthday, we would just celebrate the birthday beforehand or afterwards. I might not be there on Valentine's Day, when Hallmark, the card company, told me I should be. But we could celebrate love on a different day, right?
Absolutely.
So we were flexible, and as the kids got older, they got to come on some of the trips too. They
Hmm.
would, especially in the summer when they were out of school, we would travel as a family and do some of these assignments together. And so it had its downsides for sure, but
Yeah.
almost every time I went out, every time something broke at our house, if the furnace stopped working, if the air conditioning stopped working, it always happened when I was gone. Uh, so luckily I have a resourceful spouse and she was able to navigate that. But yeah, it had its challenges, but it also brought us some really interesting rewards that we might not have had otherwise.
Hmm. So, when did you go over fully digital,
Hmm.
and how did you manage that transition from wet to digital?
So I can't remember exactly the year, but I'll tell you that it was when I absolutely had to, because I went into it kicking and screaming. I did not, I did not want to give up the old technology. I did not want to spend new money. I didn't want to lose the craft. And, I'm a pretty smart person, but I don't always like change
Hmm.
when it involves technology. And so, God, I don't know when that would have been, 2007, 6, 5? When would it have been?
Around
When
about that sort of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can remember using a Nikon E2, which was a huge, great lump,
Mhm.
um, but it didn't have the screen on the back. I mean, it was a digital, but you couldn't see what you'd taken. It,
Oh,
it was just like using a wet camera.
well, that's a mystery, isn't it?
But then and then they upgraded that to I forget what it was now. It was another big Nikon. It was D2X or something like that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I feel like a D2000 or something was maybe my first one. I don't remember the year very well, but I'll tell you that I didn't like the transition. It took me a while to get comfortable with it, but now I like it. It's good. There are projects that I could not have done if I had to do them for film. Personal projects like this
yeah,
one we can talk about later called A Piece of My Mind. I would not have had the resources to be able to do that project if I had to pay for film and processing. And
yeah.
so digital opened up a world where I could do that.
So let's bring ourselves up to sort of date-ish then. So where are you now?
Yeah, so now I'll back up a little bit to 2008, 2009, which was a big transition for us. It's when the big recession happened, I think not just in the States, but around the world.
Mm,
And it took a great toll on my business. My workload and my revenue dropped dramatically. And when that happened, um, I wasn't sure what to do. But about that same time, I had become very frustrated with the quality of our national dialogue in the States. I was worried about all the things that ask us to look at what can separate us. And I wondered if there was something I could do with my photography and storytelling to remember what connects us. And so I started this project called A Piece of My Mind, um, where I would interview people from all different backgrounds. I would do a portrait of them, and then we would combine their picture and their story into this body of work. And eventually, we turned that into. We've got 3 books now. I've got 4 traveling exhibits that go around, and we use these stories to encourage people to listen better, to encourage people to challenge their own expectations and stay engaged with the community, to build relationships. And this started in 2008 as a small little side project, as my personal project.
Mm.
It's now grown into all that I do. So that's what we're doing. We now live in this van. We sold our house in
That's a
20.
proper downsize, that is.
Pardon me?
I said that's a proper downsize.
Yeah, it is indeed. We didn't do it all at once. We sold our house and we bought a 34-foot trailer that we pulled with our truck. Uh, and we spent a year in that and realized we wanted to be even smaller. And now we're in the van, and we've been in the van for a couple of months now, and we love it. But as we're traveling, we're going across the country, photographing and interviewing people, again, from all different backgrounds, to try to find what's human in all of us, to try to see what's good uh,
Mm.
in people again, because I think as a society, as a world, we're struggling with that. We jump right into contention, and we are using this as an exercise to remember the beauty and wisdom that's in all of us.
And you finding you're making a living? Are you be able to, can you afford to put gas in the truck?
Yeah, indeed. So, from a practical standpoint, we have a few revenue streams. We have these
Mm.
books now, and so the books bring in some revenue. Uh, we lease our exhibits to colleges and community centers and galleries, and so there are some leasing fees. We lead a lot of programming and workshops, so there are speaking fees. And then we formed a 501c3, a nonprofit. I don't know what the equivalent is in Great Britain, but we formed a nonprofit, and so we're able to access some donations, and we're
Hmm.
building a donor base of people who believe in this sort of work, and we're able to also apply for some small grants to sustain the work. So yeah, it's I'm not going to be able to retire anytime soon, and I'm not going to be able to buy a sports car when I have my midlife crisis. But we don't starve, and we feel like we're doing work that has good purpose, and
Mm.
we feel grateful and blessed to be able to encounter all of these different wonderful and amazing people across the country.
Fantastic. So, where do you see yourself going in the next 2 to 5 years?
You mean where am I going to drive my van, or do you mean more philosophically?
Well, bit of both.
Yeah. So we're going to keep at this in the United States for a little while. I think people around the world recognize that we've got some issues here in the States that we have to deal with. Um, Correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, um, there are issues of race and faith and immigration and environment and class and housing and all of these things. And we try to find these stories that can illuminate the human side of that. We try to find these stories that acknowledge the difficult struggles that we're facing, but also with a grace and a hope and a belief that something better is possible. So we try to amplify those
Mm.
stories that have found successful solutions in order to use those as our path forward. So I imagine that we'll spend a couple of years uh, still on the road here doing that kind of work in the States. Then, uh, down the road, we will shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about inner work, about the process of self reflection, and do a series of 40-day retreats in different
Mm.
fashions around spirituality, around simplicity, around self reflection, and we'll do a book and some stories around that, and then we'll shift gears to an international lens. And I think I've got connections up in a place called Corrymeela up in Northern Ireland, which is a reconciliation center, and to talk about some ways that they have worked through some of their challenges, to go to New Zealand and talk about how they have navigated their relationship with the indigenous populations that are there, because they seem to have
Yeah.
found a way to to better integrate their populations together and to provide healing from some of the colonialism that happened there. To go to
Mind you, with New Zealand, will they ever get out of lockdown?
I don't know.
They're in perpetual lockdown through Jacinda at the moment. How Jacinda's kept them in permanent lockdown because she's like the dictatorship that she's got.
Yeah, I haven't followed it, but I think they have been super cautious, and I don't
And
know
they
what
still got it.
they still are. Yeah, and they still got it. Right.
Yeah, they still got it. They tried to keep it out, and they still got it.
Right. Yeah, I'm not well enough informed to have a political conversation about whether that was or was not the right path there. I mean, I guess, different places are going to respond in different ways,
Yeah.
but they're, again, I'm not super well informed, but my sense is that they have navigated their relationship with their indigenous populations well. I'd love to go to Rwanda and talk about ways that, there are some remarkable stories of neighbors who killed neighbors and then found a way to come back and reconcile. And those, so we'll do an international version. So I think after all of those things, we're probably 10 years down the road, and I can't see any further than that right now. But that process of storytelling, I always am addressing three audiences when I do that. I'm addressing myself because I learned so much in the process about these really different things. I'm addressing the audience of the person who I interview, because I want that person who I interview to feel like they've been seen and heard and valued. And so I want them to have a positive experience. And then the third audience is the general public, as we share these stories through books and through exhibits and through social media, so that people can learn to see a bigger view of the world, to consider other perspectives, to understand different experiences. And so in the process of doing this, we've interviewed people who are Holocaust survivors and refugees and people who have terminal illnesses, people who have been through the prison system. We explore all of these ideas, and that model itself will continue, but we'll just shift the focus a little bit into some reflective models and into some international models, and see where that all leads.
Really good.
I don't know how to do anything else at this point, Tim, so we'll just keep doing it.
Sounds like you're stuck in that sort of rut.
It's a pretty good rut. I don't mind it at all.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, John, I've really, really enjoyed that. I think that's been really, really good chatting with you today.
Yeah, likewise. I've enjoyed it. Thanks for taking the time, Tim.
No, it's an absolute pleasure.
The Tim Heale Podcasts. Ordinary people's extraordinary stories.